Ah, the magical world of Disney. So much goes on off stage and behind the scenes to ensure that the guests have the most magical times of their lives. Once they arrive on the property, ever seen a wet paint sign while walking through the parks? How about a maintenance cast member with a bag of tools? Anyone with a construction hard hat? Of course you haven't. That would ruin the experience that WDW is perfection. It's because that 99.99% of all work goes on after the show is over. All the little mice that keep the place running like clockwork don't even start working until the announcement is made over the radios we carry that the park is now clear. Then the crews get to work. Maintenance starts buzzing around on their golf carts. The custodial cast members bring out the large hoses to wash down every inch of the streets we all walk on. And the construction crews are allowed to past the security perimeter gates to come in and do whatever needs to be done. That's where my story begins. I've worked construction most of my life. When work dried up north, I moved to Florida, where some of my family have moved over 10 years ago. Naturally, I needed to find a job. I wound up applying for and getting hired by a construction company that shall remain nameless, that literally did almost all the construction needs for the corporate mouse. I spent 5 or 6 overnights a week at various locations at WDW with coworkers. We weren't employed by Disney, hence we were not cast members, doing whatever our foreman told us that what needed to be done. Sweet gig, actually, even though it was very hard work at times. Just think, how many people can truly say that they get to ride around Magic Kingdom, Animal Kingdom, etc. in the dead of night, in trucks, golf carts, what have you, while the park is just about empty, except for a skeleton crew. For about the first 6 months, I kind of kept to myself, except for talking with the crew of the company that I worked for. Then I began noticing how chummy many of the Disney overnight crew was with our staff. Custodians, when working in the same areas as us, would come and talk to the boys, as well as the overnight security cast members. I began to slowly get to know many of these folks as well. They, for the most part, were really nice. I got to know how many of the night and security staff, by face at least, at all 4 parks, as well as the resorts. If you didn't know, WDW Walt Disney World opened in 1971. It was actually not too uncommon to come across someone who had been a lifer with Disney or knew someone who was 40 plus years working for the mouse. God bless him. Even my foreman, who although did not work directly for Walt Disney World, was one of these. Boy, did they have some stories to tell to pass the time. As I adjusted more to the job, I began to get more comfortable with the surroundings. The cast members grew more social towards me, and I was able to make my way through the parks without getting lost too. Let me tell you, that is not an easy feat. When you first start out working there, especially at night, although it's not pitch black, there is very minimal lighting except where we put our floodlights up to do work. Security is only using flashlights or the headlight of their carts to light their ways, and store lights are only on if someone is working in them. Quite eerie, and yet cool at the same time. It's like a totally different place than during operating hours. As a matter of fact, one time when I decided to visit the park as a guest, I couldn't find a ride that I wanted to go on because it looked so different during the day, with all the colors, people, sounds, and music. 1 year of working at the place full time, and I had to swallow my stupid pride and go get a map. Pathetic. Anyway, as I started conversing more and more with the cast members, some of the security staff and I found out that we had a mutual interest in the paranormal. Of course, that would come up in conversation eventually when working graveyard shifts. I would get to hear stories from them all the time. the famous Ghost in the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, the murder-suicide in one of the rooms of a certain resort, the jumping off of terraces at another, ghosts of cast members who passed on that come back and say hi, the spooky occurrences at rides where some unfortunate guest was killed. The stories went on and on. Although fun to hear, I won't lie, it did give the whole property an ominous feel at times that a guest will never get to experience. Even co-workers of mine had stories to tell, attractions turning on even though the lockout tagout system is in place to ensure that they don't, following someone to a break room and walking in to find no one in there, of course. The noises and voices when they were working alone. Ghost hunters! Jackpot! Dude! So several months ago, when arriving at work, the foreman called our team over for a meeting. He announced we would be starting a new assignment in the Magic Kingdom shortly. We would be working on the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train ride. This attraction will be opening later in the year. How exciting! Up until now, my crew, since I had started with them, had been doing mundane yet necessary assignments. We had the pleasure of pouring concrete, digging ditches, fixing bathrooms, good stuff. Now we were actually going to get to work on an attraction. Imagine me getting to tell my future wife and children that I helped make this as we were riding it. They would be in awe and so proud. The building was already up for the most part, and we were going to be working on making it show ready, you know? Making a building look like a mine inside and out. Fabricating rocks, fixating jewels, and the works. When the time came to start this, he had us meet in one of the cast member break rooms inside the attraction. For those who don't know, most, if not all attractions have break rooms inside them, that the public can't see. A cast member working the ride literally doesn't have to leave it if he or she doesn't want to, even for a lunch break. He explained the job, who would be doing each week, and all the normal details. Then he proceeded to tell us that, as per Disney management, we were all to take our lunch breaks at 3 a.m. and to only take it in this particular break room we were in. I thought that was kind of weird, since my employment with them began. We were never told when or where to take lunch. We used to always stagger our breaks as well, so that most of the crew were always working. Whatever, I guess, the mouse paid our bills, and who the hell was I to question it? I was still a rookie. But I will say this, I saw what I was thinking in the eyes of my coworkers as well. We were only a group of 10 guys on this assignment, and we were broken up into groups of 5. One group would work on the outside, and one group would on the inside of the attraction. I was in the inside group. It was a pain to work in that thing. Due to the size of the spaces where we had to work, maybe 1 or 2 floodlights would fit in an area where we were working. It gave an effect of staring into a fire in the woods. While working on the wall, it was bright as hell. When you came out of that space, you were blind as a bat. The first few days, it became a running joke contest of who tripped on something and broke their ass the most each week. Had to pay for drinks when we went out together. I paid up twice for the first month. Thanks, Disney. I guess you could call me paranoid, but I would never leave my lunch bag in the fridge in the break room. I'm an absolute angry asshole if I get hungry, and after having it stolen once while at Animal Kingdom, I was not going to have it happen again. So I just carried it with my other gear from then on. We were working on the opposite side of the attraction from the break room, and it was just about lunchtime. We cleaned up at all the possible trip hazards and went on break. When we got to the break room, I realized I had left my bag where we were working. Damn it! There was no way I was spending $8 on a Coke and a stupid bear claw from one of the Disney rip-off vending machines. I told the guys I was going to run back and get my bag, so off I went. I was hurrying along because we would only get a half hour for lunch, and we'd take even a minute longer to get back to our work location. There is hell to pay. And you all know how fast half hour flies by unless you're working. Trying to make good time, I must have made a wrong turn in all that blackness. My stupid flashlight was in my tool bag, of course. I was attempting to feel my way around the track when I saw a light coming up ahead of me. They looked like they could be a set of emergency lights, but they were quite dim and flickering. Who cares? Any porter in the storm, right? I slowly made my way towards them and began to hear voices, but I couldn't make out any words. There was no one in the attraction other than us, or so we were told. Oh my god, after all the stories I was told, was I finally going to have one of my own? As much as I felt the hairs on my neck stand up, I was excited as well. Even though I finally like hearing about ghosts, I can't say that I am really, truly afraid of them. I just don't want them in my home. Other than that, I find the idea of them fascinating. I slowly peeked my head around the next corner. I wish to God it was a ghost I saw. It was a large, at least compared to where we were working, open space and there was a fabricated stone slab made to look like a natural rock formation in the center. 6 figures in suits were around it in a circle. 5 were holding candles, while one was reading off what looked like an old piece of parchment. What he was saying was beyond my knowledge, not English, from what I could hear. Every time the main suit would finish a sentence or two, the others would repeat the last word. As I crouched there amazed, I saw what looked like a flash of yellow and blue stirring from the top of the altar of those college program kids. There was someone on it. I saw what looked like a flash of yellow, blue stirring from the top of the altar. There was someone on it, a woman. She stirred again, and I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. It looked like one of those college program kids that get to be friends with the characters, completely dressed as Snow White. She was gagged and bound. What the hell was I seeing? Her eyes were huge and filled with fright. Tears were streaming down her face, making her overly done makeup run. As much as she struggled, she could barely move. The man with the parchment stopped reading. The others all produced some crudely made daggers and made their way to her. 2 of them went to each of her arms, 2 to her legs, and 1 stood at the top of her head. The leader, for lack of a better word, made a gesture with his hands and said one more uncomprehendable word, and the others moved in. The 2 by her arms sliced her arms from mid-bicep down to her wrists. 2 others did the same from mid-thigh to the tops of her feet. The 5th actually carved what looked like a half moon into her forehead. I stifled a scream and closed my eyes. I could hear muffled screams and smell copper in my nostrils and taste it in the back of my throat. I opened my eyes briefly to see that the leader produce a knife, walk over to the altar, and lift poor Snow White's chin up toward him. That's when I turned and ran. I got back to the break room, sprinting through the door. I must have looked half crazed because one of my buddies said, "What the hell happened to you? And where's your lunch bag?" I didn't even answer him. I just stood there. He looked me over one more time and decided to call the foreman over the radio to come talk to me. The foreman came in, took one look at me, and asked if I was feeling okay. I shook my head. He told me to go home for the remainder of my shift. I called out sick the next 3 days. In the comfort of my home, I attempted to rationalize what had happened. It had to be a gag, right? Was it my boys with an elaborate "welcome to the crew" trick? I mean, God, Walt Disney World is crammed full of college program kids. Late teens and early 20-year-olds away from home and college, getting paid crap just so they could put Disney on their resumes. Just fornicating and causing havoc every chance they get, playing tricks so they can put it on their blogs or Twitter or whatever else stupid things they used to get attention. Had to be. On my first night back to work, I literally had to force myself not to turn my car around at the security gate when the guard opened it for me to enter. When I got to the break room, one of the lifers I worked with was sitting there seemingly waiting for me. He told me to clock in, leave my stuff with him, and go meet the foreman over by the main entrance. I looked at him quizzically since it was pretty far from where the mine was, and it was heavily frowned upon from us non-cast members to be found wandering far from where we were assigned. I stated as such. He just said, "Go. You'll be with your boss, so it would be his ass and not yours if someone says something." I made my way over to the main entrance and found him under the train station, sitting on one of the benches he told me to sit. We sat there for about 5 minutes without speaking. He lit up a cigarette, and I did as well. During night shift, you could get away with this if you were careful about it. He asked me what had happened to me the other night. I just shrugged, looked at the newly hosed down ground, and exhaled. He put his hand on my shoulder and said that I was a great coworker and the other guys all liked me a lot. He didn't want to lose me, and that he was surprised I came back after the way I had looked. I told him that it wasn't far from the truth. He asked me if I was sick or something that had happened. He also asked me if maybe a cast member manager had given me a hard time, and if so, he'll handle it. I shook my head and said that he wouldn't believe me and probably fire me for being a nut if I told him. He then said something that made me feel it was okay to tell my story. He said, "I've worked here since it was just flat land and dirt roads. Nothing you say could shock me." I looked up at him, dead in the eyes. When I saw that he was telling the truth, I began to explain everything from the beginning. I ended my story with that other guy when the other guy told me to come see him. My foreman sat there, flicked his cigarette butt, and grounded it on the floor. A huge Disney no-no. He had sat there nodding through the entire story, not interrupting once. Never once a smirk, a smile, or a look of disbelief. A custodial truck happened to drive by when the headlights flashed on us. I had seen that all the blood had seemed to drain from my foreman's face. He breathed in and exhaled once. From the mouth, he had the beginnings of tears in his eyes. He finally spoke. "What I'm about to tell you, kiddo, not many have been here long enough to know, and those who do know almost never speak about. It's sort of a taboo subject, and the few that talk about it are too old to care, or had one too many scotches." He smiled half-heartedly at this, and I thought maybe he might stop, but he continued. I have lived in this area for almost 80 years. I have barely been out of the state, less times than I can count on one hand. Orlando has only looked this way for a short time. If you could have seen this land in the time I grew up here, you would be amazed. Marshland and orange groves, nothing else. Until Uncle Walt decided this was the spot for his very next incredible theme park. There was practically nothing. Humans have been inhabiting this land for a very long time. The Ayes, the Apalachee, the Kauzia, and the Timucua, and the Togobago. All native Indians that lived in or around the land you are sitting on right now. The Indians were before them. Ancient lands. Well, I'm no historian, but I guess them Indians at some point figured out this land was a little spoiled. Spoiled as in not just bad, but spoiled as in how a little child throws a tantrum if it doesn't get its way. At some point, when these cultures were not having good weather or crops, what have you, they figured out that a blood sacrifice could do the trick. Every time that they built a large structure in this area, they drew blood. But for whatever reason, the sacrifice had to do with the structure being built. For example, if the Indians were building a religious structure, a shaman had to be sacrificed. If a settler was building a barn or orange grove, a farmhand had to be the one. You get me? And it had to be done by the elders of the town. Couldn't be done by just anyone, but by the elders most influential ones in the area. You ever seen that movie Pet Sematary by Stephen King? Like that, but the important people involved. Do you know the story about Disney buying this land? He bought it not under the Disney brand, but hundreds of pseudo companies. He didn't want anyone to know he was going to build a theme park here because the locals may have not sold as cheaply as they did. So he did what he did. I wonder if, through all this half-truth bargaining, if him or his roundtable executives ever wondered why so many were willing to sell at that price. Were they done having to do the despicable to make a profit here? Did many of them want out? It can really make you wonder. And how come supposedly no one dies at Disney? How come all the people proclaim dead off the property? And why do we hire so many college kids that are supposedly running rampant here? Think about it. I gotta tell you, because I think you may deserve it after you've seen what you claim to. The powers at be here are powerful, more powerful than just being Disney executives. They pretty much rule everything. You think Club 33 is exclusive? But when he laughed, but with no humor. The club you stumbled upon the rules more than just a theme park. If you talk about what you've seen, your life might be in danger. I just sat there, trying to soak in what I just had heard. This was insane. And then my foreman said one more thing before the last sentence I ever said to that nice man. If you think that was bad, just imagine what I heard as we were building It's a Small World. I swear I still hear those screams of those kids once I close my eyes at night, 40 years after. My reply? I quit. Ah, the magical world of Disney. I still get the shakes when I think about it. I hate every fucking Disney commercial that comes on TV. And they come on a lot. I get goosebumps every time. I see that Universal is hiring. I need work. Should I apply? Well, well, well. Another Disney creepypasta. How insane is that? So that is working at Disney. Now this creepypasta, the guy, I gotta be honest, is really, really good. Based on really the, I guess the historical facts, like, it's really hysterical, like, all the history of how Walt Disney actually had to use false company names to try to buy the land for in Orlando to build Walt Disney World, because his name was so well known to the general public at the time that the price tag would be really, really high. But it worked for a while until the Orlando newspaper got the scoop that it was Disney, and then it went $1,000 an acre. I gotta be honest, I really like all the details of being in Disney, like smoking cigarettes and leaving them on the floor. That's a Disney no-no. Like the show ready, like the break rooms, like all those details that usually a regular Joe Schmo would not know about. And they're all college kid programs. That's honestly true, because I remember when I used to go to college, they had a Disney program. They had I guess a Disney program where you can actually work in Walt Disney World. One of my cousins actually did that. She had a lot of fun though doing that. So that's kind of funny where it said all those college program kids, because that's really really true, because that's what because there's that program, that I guess scholarship, that the college I used to go to had for Disney, that you can work in Disney. But the one thing that's kind of weird to me is that whole blood sacrifice thing. Like, it just seems really, really weird that they would have to sacrifice like a specific thing that has something to do with what they were building. Like, if it was like, again, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, if it was that Seven Dwarfs mine train, then they had to sacrifice Snow White. And then they alluded to the whole fact that when they built It's a Small World, they had to sacrifice a bunch of children. And I'm pretty sure I butchered the pronunciations of some of these Indian cultures. I'm definitely sure if I butchered the pronunciation of these cultures, I apologize. Palo Indians. Okay. The Club 33. Like, I just find the ending kind of funny. It's like, I see that Universal is hiring. It was just like, it seems like a typical cliche ending where they're like, oh, I'll go work for the competition. Oh, go work at Universal Studios in Orlando while they're building Nintendo Land and the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. It seems like that this took like the time of when this story takes place is around 2013, 2014. Is that because that's when the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train actually opened, around 2014, in the new Fantasyland expansion. So I kind of find this creepypasta really interesting. I think it's, for historical accuracy, really good. Really, really good. Especially with the history of how Walt Disney World was built. And how it came about. And all the details about working in Disney, like the cast, like those specific things, like a break room, a lifer, cast members, like stuff like that. Lockout, tag out, like stuff like that, just everything. I gotta be honest, it's really, really good. But the only nitpick I have was the whole blood sacrifice. That just seems a little weird, and now they have to sacrifice like a video game expert. When they built Tron, they have to sacrifice Chris Pratt for the Guardians of the Galaxy ride. They have to sacrifice Mark Hamill for the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and they have to sacrifice Tom Hanks for the whole Toy Story Land. Like, that's how weird it sounds. To be honest, that's really a nitpick, but I gotta be honest, I'll give this creepypasta a 9 out of 10. I really, really enjoyed this creepypasta. It was really fun to read, and I really was intrigued by it. So I think that's that's all I have to say about this creepypasta. It's really good, and I highly recommend you read it for yourself. Now, let me know what creepypasta you want me to read next in the comments down below. If you have any changes in this creepypasta to make it even better, leave me know in the comments down below. let me know in the comments down below. Not leave me know. Let me know in the comments down below. If you like what you saw here, hit the like button, subscribe, share this video with your friends. Be sure to ring that bell to be part of the notification squad. Be sure to also check out my Instagram because I make cool edits of Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, even myself. I also do reenactments and cosplays on there, so go check it out. So, until next time, JRDO96 signing out, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.